So today I have a treat, something a little different. I have a conversation that I had with my friend Katie Shelly. She's an illustrator from Barcelona. When I talked to her today, she was actually in New York. But anyway, we had a really great conversation just about the sort of the experience of transitioning from a previous career into illustration and the things you need to do, the challenges of doing that, how to kind of make things connect so that you're getting work from clients and promoting yourself, getting calls from art directors and stuff like that. Stick around. We have a good hour and 10 minutes of a really amazing conversation. I'm really excited to share the conversation with you guys, and I hope you guys get a lot from it and enjoy it. If you do enjoy it, please hit that like button, and of course, subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying the videos that I put here. It means a lot. So enjoy, and I'll see you in the next video.
I'm in New York. I'm actually in New York City, even though behind me it's very green because my parents live like on the outer edge of the city limits.
Oh, okay. So you're the one from New York. He's from Spain, which is
Yes.
why you're in Spain, or why you live there. You kind of
Yes.
more or less live there right now, right?
Yeah, I live in Barcelona, and I come home to see my parents here about twice a year.
Okay, nice.
So it's
Well,
a
what's
good time to hang out and chat on Skype because
yeah.
I'm not really working, just kind of in vacation, chilling out at my parents' house mode.
Oh, okay. Hopefully you haven't forgotten like any pressing questions, which
I
I
haven't.
would if I were on vacation. I would have just forgotten everything I thought I needed to know.
Well, it's two for one because my head is clearer in a way than usual, and I can kind of see things, with a little
Okay.
bit more big picture.
Okay, good. Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
remember where we left off the last time?
Oh gosh. We had like a super meandering conversation.
Yeah.
I do have like little notes here about what I had said we would talk about today.
Okay.
Um, but that was from a recent email.
Okay. I have no plan or whatever for this particular conversation. I figured you had
Mhm.
said that like you had a new set of questions probably that were more relevant this time around.
Mhm.
And just as a refresher, we had this like long meandering, like maybe it was like 3 hour conversation.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel like we talked a lot about his stuff. Unfortunately, the recording was just it didn't work out, and so we scheduled this call, and that was like I think that was in March or even
Yeah.
earlier. I don't
It was a while
remember.
ago.
It was a long time ago. But anyway, yeah, I'm happy to connect with you again and um, yeah, have another good. I just had a great. I remember just having a great conversation the last time, and uh, I'm sure we'll have lots to talk about today. So yeah, what's going on right now with you in terms of illustration?
Um, I think where I'm at is I kind of reached the point recently where I decided like illustration is what I really want to do.
Hmm.
I've had kind of like a long meandering career path through different types of design, video production. I worked in a museum, and I think probably that profile might resonate with a lot of people who listen to your vidcast. Like a lot of, not everyone, but it sounds like some illustrators arrive there kind of like after having tried a bunch of things.
Hmm.
Particularly, a lot of people try. I have met a lot of people who say they start out as graphic designers, including you,
Hmm.
um, and then kind of realize, like, actually, I think I want to settle down in illustration. So I'm one of those people, um, and I am kind of just settling into the idea and figuring out what this like getting the anatomy of the industry basically is what I've been doing for the last year or
Okay.
two.
Yeah. So
And that's how
getting the anatomy meaning.
like who are the people who commission illustration? How should an illustrator be prepared? Um what kind of schooling or skills are required. How do my skills, existing skills, line up with that? What are my weak spots?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, just trying to get the lay of the land of like, who are the people who pay for this kind of work? How do you get that work? And how do you make yourself a competitive um, option for someone who's wanting to commission illustration? So I've been kind of like piecemeal putting all that information together, mostly through the web. And
Mm-hmm.
your vidcasts and your Instagram posts have been super helpful
Awesome.
in that, which is why I reached out to you in the first place.
Right.
Um, so I think for me personally, where I'm at right now is I think one of the weaker spots that I've identified for myself is just how much time I set aside a day to actually play around and draw and experiment and push
Right.
my own work. So like, I dedicate lots of time. I have a couple of clients to kind of doing client work, which is over here, and time to kind of learning and developing myself. This kind of thing, like talking to other illustrators or reading online, or and being like, okay, how do I promote myself? How does that work?
Mm-hmm.
And then what gets squeezed and what I notice I have very little time for and what I think I might be weakest at is actually like, sit down for an hour or two a day and just like play around and experiment with style and see where it takes you, which is actually the most important thing, arguably, of the whole package of an illustrator. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, making money with actual clients is pretty important, and
Yeah.
promoting yourself, on the other hand, is pretty important. But you need to find that somewhere in there that you're growing and things are going in a direction you want them to,
Yeah.
even if only sort of kind of privately at the moment, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
And then hopefully, like eventually, or at least sometimes even now, you're finding some of that growth in your actual client work, right?
Right.
You are, whether it's kind of like voluntary or not, there's probably some element of that, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah. Is that possible? True?
Yeah. I always try to bring my clients with me into wherever I'm at, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like,
Hmm.
right now I'm really into this kind of like looser, more free style. And then I try to bring the client into that option and say, like, hey, are you interested in exploring this with me? Because this is what's really interesting to me right now.
Hmm.
But client won't always come with you there because they might have contacted you for a previous style
Right.
or something simpler, or maybe it's just not their taste.
Yeah. Yeah. This is like on the trajectory, this is like if you're kind of more beginning, kind of making that
Hmm.
transition from design to illustration, and you're just starting to sort of find your style and all that, that's going to be the case because the last jobs you did will be a little bit behind you and what you want to be doing now.
Right.
And so your clients will know you from either from something totally different or just from something recent that you've done, and you're always trying to push ahead. So I think that eventually that those things kind of start to catch up and align. But um, you had said the last time, I think, that you had a lot of clients that you took with you maybe from the design world, or just people from a smaller sphere, and you were looking to kind of
Hmm.
branch out. How has that been going?
Yes. Right. So, should I explain a little bit the backstory or go
Yeah,
right into it?
go for it. Yeah, backstory is good.
Um, okay. Go for it with the backstory.
Yes, please.
Okay, so the backstory is that basically the way I got started with illustration was I said to everybody I knew, friends, family, everything, like, I'm decided to go full time illustration. Please contact me with absolutely anything.
Hmm.
I got contacted by friends of friends, or even like parents of some of my friends, just people who are 1 or 2 degrees of separation from me, from
Yeah.
trusted contacts, who said, like, oh, hey, like, I'm writing a children's book. Would you illustrate it? Or I'm a professor and I give talks and my slides are really boring. Like, can you help me like put some nice images in there? Um, or I need a t-shirt for my birthday party or whatever.
Right. No, that's great.
Like starting there, but I think thinking towards the future and thinking about this whole career being sustainable, I'm kind of thinking like, I think I need to expand my client base into people who have bigger budgets,
Hmm.
uh, are more professional. So not just kind of like a lay person who would like an image for something in their small business or whatever, but more of like an actual art director, someone who is an expert in working with illustrators. And I
Hmm.
was really
Absolutely.
missing that kind of um, helpful, pointed feedback, you know?
Hmm.
Uh, so I started to try to figure out how you get those clients, which was kind of a
Hmm.
mystery. And I talked to a lot of different people. I've done a couple of little courses um, here and there, online, in person. And what I understand, I'm curious if you kind of agree with this, is that um, most illustrators who are kind of in the caliber of working with agencies or regularly working with that kind of like higher level of client, which is what I'm aspiring to,
Hmm.
are they're promoting themselves constantly.
Hmm. True.
Like emails, like when I first heard like 4 times a year, that seemed like a lot to me. But now
Okay.
I'm understanding it could be like 2, 3, 4 times a year, either sending out an email. A blast is a terrible word because it sounds like you're like spraying people with propaganda, but
Yeah.
email blasts or sending out emails to people or sending out postcards.
Right. Okay. And so that's what you've started to sort of ramp up with since we
Yeah.
last talked. And how has that gone?
Well, so I started with the idea of a postcard, um, just because it kind of sounded fun.
Totally. Yeah.
Even though a lot of people criticize postcards and they say they're old fashioned and whatever, but then there's this other camp of people who say, no, postcards are still used. So I figured I would just kind of try it as an experiment.
Sure.
I spent tons of time researching art directors. So I bought these like huge, like $70 annuals, like American Illustration is one of
Hmm.
them, Society of Illustrators annual is the other one. And also just going through Instagram and keeping a list of the art directors that I see. And so the way I looked for art directors was looking for work that kind of seemed like my style or something close to it.
Hmm.
Um, and say like, okay, if that person liked this style of illustration, they might like my style of illustration. So those are the people who went in my list. And
That's
so
fantastic.
I have this huge Google contacts database of
Hmm.
art directors, mailing address, email address, where they work, and then I put in like notes like this person only does food or this person only does travel or whatever. Um, so that was a huge undertaking and it's kind of an ongoing process because as I see more names on Instagram, for example, I'll throw them into the database. And so I just printed off a bunch of cards and I'm going to send them out, a batch of 100 cards. So that'll be my first real like big kid promotion.
Okay. That's awesome. Well, I think you're doing good things. Like you're doing the research part, that component of just finding who your people are, who your tribe or whatever, the people
Hmm.
you want to attract, the people you want to be a part of. That's so important. And you don't always get a material result from that, but you know yourself more and you have a better lay of the land. So it's like a long game thing. Regardless of what happens with the postcards and your mail out and your email blast, you're gonna it's such a like a marketing word.
Yeah,
It's very
totally.
slimy. But your email blast, yeah, all those things are they'll be good. Like it's good to do those, but the sort of longer game of that is just like you start to become a part of the community, even sort of by osmosis or something. Like you start to just be aware of it, and that's a huge step forward for sure. It seems like you've been actively doing some interesting things. I've been seeing on Instagram your stairs, for instance. Want to talk a bit about that?
Sure. I got approached. I live in Barcelona, and Barcelona has tons of community centers, um, which are kind of like a public service, a government run thing. And so one of these community centers near my house has this whole like mural um, thing. Like they're always promoting murals and working with artists. And so they approached me and asked me if I would do a participatory community mural on a staircase. So the mural is actually on the riser of each step. So you have to stand in a certain place for the image to kind of work
Hmm.
in perspective. So it was a ton of work. We had like maybe 50 school kids come and help us paint. And one thing that you are part of this mural because
Hmm.
the first mock-up that I did, I was really unhappy with. They're figures of different people doing different kinds of dance and jugglers and musicians and that sort of thing, like performing arts. Um, and so the first mock-up I did, I was really unhappy with. And I thought, I'm going to take Tom's Odd Bodies class, which was in the back of my mind for a long time,
Okay.
but I never got around to it. And I thought, I'm going to do the class and I'm going to have the mural in mind and see if that helps me come up with a better proposal for the mural. So that's exactly what I did. And so your class really helped me render those figures in a way that I was much happier with than my
Oh, that's
first
awesome.
round. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Cool.
that was like a huge success story
Yeah.
of the Odd Bodies class
Yeah.
for
Did you
sure.
get feedback from the client there?
They loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it, loved it.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
I
great.
mean, there's so many stakeholders involved because you have the community, the neighbors who live next door to the mural, which is a pretty important stakeholder because it's literally like right outside the front door of their house.
Hmm.
So a lot of people who lived in the apartment buildings right next to the staircase were like, "We love this. This is so nice." Like these walking up these stairs because it's 100 steps.
Okay.
So
Everyone
it's
in that
really,
building must be fit.
yes, there's actually a 96-year-old man who lives there and goes up
Yeah.
the stairs every single day. And he was out there like chatting with us and saying like, do you need a hat? Do you need some food? Like, I'll make you eggs. He was really sweet.
Nice.
So we got really positive feedback from the neighbors. The kids had so much fun painting. Like they were so focused and so into it. Um, and of course the community center was happy because what they want to see is the community happy.
Okay.
So the neighbors were happy and the kids were happy. The community center who commissioned it was happy. So it
Good.
was really great overall. Yeah.
Yeah. Congrats. And I guess you photographed the whole thing and documented it.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any video of you guys actually in the act of making it?
I do. On Instagram, there's a little short video on my stories and also in my posts. I have a different video. So there's a
Okay.
few different videos of the actual painting and process.
Yeah, because mural painting and all that kind of outdoor surface stuff is the coolest, in my opinion. I really enjoy that kind of thing
Yeah.
to look at and to show, but it's also the hardest to document in a way that kind of translates your vision and the pure illustration aspect of it. There's always this
Hmm.
sort of like the lighting and the camera and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's a challenge, but it's definitely worth it if you can do it. I wanted to sort of go back just because I think a lot of the audience actually has a lot of the viewers have a lot of questions around the postcard.
Yes.
And you brought up the idea of some people say it's old school, and some people say
Yeah.
it's, there's always like the people who want to um, eat the egg small end first, and the people want to eat the egg big end first, right? You know the story Gulliver's Travels.
No.
There's
I
like
feel like
the
I should, but I don't.
So it's like he goes to this land called Lilliput, and he's a giant compared to these people. Like I think he's a normal sized person. I vaguely remember the story, but the people are tiny,
Yeah.
and they're sort of divided in two camps, and one camp is the little Endians, and the other camp is the big Endians. And the big
Hmm.
Endians eat the egg from the big end, and the little Endians eat the egg from the little end.
Uh-huh.
And so they have like fights and disputes about this. And anyway, the whole thing is like it kind of reminded me of the postcard. I mean, it's like there's always this polarity.
Right.
And I'm actually kind of more in the skeptical side of postcards,
Hmm.
in the sense that because it's such a common medium, it's hard to stand out, right? But on the other hand, it's such a standard, traditional, um, simple format that you should do it, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. Like
Hmm.
it's like when you're a designer back in the day, you do like the envelope, the letterhead, the business card. Like that was a
Right.
staple. You do that. Even if you never made a letterhead, I've never made an actual letterhead for anyone. Even if I have, never. Who uses letterhead? Um,
Right.
with the postcard, it's a really good little canvas to think about, because you start thinking about what is my thing, what is that
Right.
one image that I want to promote myself with. And I don't, I haven't done a postcard since my letterpress postcard that I made in 2013, and that's still kind of, I still have a few left that's still working, even though that's not even like my main kind of look anymore. Um, the I guess it's the same thing though. Like if you want to put an ad in, say, a directory of illustration, like workbook. I've had to do that a few times over the last few years, and it's always hard to say what one image am I going to put on this page. It's the same thing with the postcard. And so the exercise of doing that's really good, because it starts getting you, it helps you refine yourself and kind of focus on who you are and all that. And so I do recommend doing a postcard. But I also sort of hedge it around, I would say just hedge your expectations a little bit, um, in terms of what it can actually do. It's a challenge. It's a design challenge. Can you like how far can you push the format,
Right.
and make that postcard um, something special? And I think that's always been my take on it, is like if you're gonna do the postcard, make it something someone's gonna wanna put on their wall.
Right.
Something that is an image that, like, for instance, if the image was only autobiographical, an art director might not connect to it. But if there is some message on it, if you could find some piece of your work or make some work of it that connected with something that's meaningful to both of you in that image, then suddenly it's a shared experience. It's something that you guys share. So that's kind of my take on the postcard. It's like you should probably do one, at least one in your career, see how it goes, and then just kind of like be challenged with like how can you make it really something special, which is such a it's easy to say, very hard to do.
Hmm. What are your thoughts more generally on promotion and timing and how to do it? Like, there's the annuals, there's emails, there's postcards.
Hmm.
Do you have an idea?
So in my own experience as an illustrator, I have never done an email blast. I've never done a blast. I have always emailed individual people.
Hmm.
And same with even my postcards. I've never done a huge blast. The biggest blast I've done is maybe 6 or 7 postcards at once, because I'm sort of like, rather than spread myself thin and spray and pray kind of thing,
Right.
you sort of pick who you want at the exclusion of all others. Like
Mhm.
nobody else even matters. That's kind of,
Right.
I'm a bit myopic and focused in that way. Like I'm sort of like, I just need to do these, and if these work out, then good. If not, plan B. And
Right.
so I am all about like, maybe there's one, I mean, in the way that you reached out to me originally, right? Like there's this one person
Right.
you want to talk to, and
Right.
then you might or might not get a response, and then hopefully something does, and then it's just a conversation. It's good, and that may or
Mhm.
may not turn into work, or that may not, you know what I mean? Like, and that's always been my approach, is like, build a relationship with someone, reach out, say you like their work, or you want to pick their brain or something like that. You may or may not, they may or may not be able to do that, but it's by doing those little things over the course of my life that have connected me to people. Um, so in terms of getting an illustration agent, I did get that through a postcard. It was my letterpress postcard. I sort of made it as special as I could. It really reflected something that I loved. It was also something that other people resonated with. And I sent it to 6 or 7 choice agencies, and 2 of them came back to me with offers. So, there's all different factors in there of why they did come back to me.
Mhm.
But the fact that it was personal had a lot to do with it. I hand wrote in my like India ink with a nib pen on the back, that just kind
Yep.
of related to who I am as a creative, so it
Right.
worked. I'm not saying, I know a lot of people do like more bulk emails. And in my case, the closest thing to that is putting my work in illustration directories, particularly workbook. And I did that because that was kind of what my New York agent was doing with all their artists, and they had kind of a volume discount. And so we put in, I personally have no metrics on whether that those last 5 or 6 images that I've put in the workbook have, I don't know um, whether that's materialized in any way. I've never heard anyone reference those. Whenever I've actually asked people how they found me, they'll say, "Oh, I found you on Instagram, or I saw you in something that you've made before. Um, I read a blog post that you made." So those kinds of things to me have been more valuable. Are the when you're creating. So there's the on the one hand, that personal connection, reaching out, um, and then the other thing is like creating some kind of content. We all do that now on Instagram. We all create content, which is good. Um, writing, for me, like writing blog posts, being on Twitter, and so it's all these sort of like roundabout ways. I'm very much a soft seller. I don't like a hard sell. And so
Mhm.
I like to just go and do my thing, make some work, make some content, try and connect to people, not with the expressed goal of them hiring me, but just picking their brain or whatever. And so those kinds of things have always been what I've done, and they've seemed to work out. I don't, who knows why? It could be my personality, it could be my previous connections I've had. I don't know. It's very hard to say. I don't know if that um, answers your question.
Well, I think what I'm getting from what you're saying is that it's a very, very individual thing, promotion.
I think so. You do what you want to do to promote yourself.
Right.
But the
Right.
key is, what you hit on was that you had said that successful kind of illustrators within a certain caliber are very active in self promotion. I do think that's true, but
Mhm.
the method is very, it varies greatly, I think.
Right.
Like I even when I create products that I need to sell, like I do collaborations with my friend Vince. He's a letterpress printer. We create products. We try and
Mhm.
get them in shops. I am
Mhm.
very shy about contacting uh, stockists or selling it on my Instagram, like pushing it to my followers,
Yeah.
because I don't want them to feel advertised to or solicited. I want them. I much prefer people organically are drawn to something, they're drawn to it rather than it being pushed to them, right? Because
Right.
there's just so much um, noise out there, so many things, people trying to push something on you. So I want to be,
Right.
I'd rather be something that someone is drawn to rather than, and don't we all, right? That's
Yeah.
if only. But I guess all I'm saying is, I guess the reason I'm saying that is because even when I have a product that I need to push, like it's my job to like actually peddle my wares and push it out there, walk into a store and put it on their counter and say, I made this. Would you sell it in your shop? I've had to do that, and I hate doing it so much because I, I guess maybe it's fear of rejection or insecurity, but it's also sort of respect. Like I don't want to waste their time or make them feel put on the spot, right?
Mhm.
Like especially today, like if a girl guide comes to our front door to sell cookies, it's like it's sort of like I my heart races and I'm like, do I get it? I'm like, it's a girl guide. Answer the door, right?
Yeah.
It's that feeling of like I don't want to be put on the spot. We're just
Right.
not good at being put on the spot anymore. Have you
Yeah.
seen? Do you know that comedian Sebastian meant I can't say his last name, like Mantiscolo or something like that. He's on Comedians in Cars with Jerry Seinfeld. Anyway, he has this whole bit about like we used to have company and people would like it would be like an event. People loved it, and it was like if someone
I think
came to
I
the
have seen that guy. Yeah, that rings a bell.
yeah, it
Go
rings the
go ahead.
doorbell.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, the doorbell rings. It was like get out the special guest cake and da da da. And now people are like kind of ducking and hiding and so it's a really good bit because it's so true. But anyway, that's sort of I'm the epitome of that. Like I'm like, why are you calling me? Who calls me on my phone anymore? And anyway, uh, that tempers my approach.
Right.
A lot of other people are just more gregarious and with like just in a postcard or a mass kind of situation, they're okay with that, and that's fine. So I just have to understand that everyone is different. And I mean, what do you think? How do you think your personality plays into an approach that you might take? Like, what's your
You
ideal
said
scenario?
what you said earlier about thinking about the people I'd really like to work with and just focusing on them really resonates with me.
Mhm.
Like, for example, when it came time to think about college and applying to college, there was just one college I wanted to go to.
Mhm.
And it was the only one I thought about and the only one that I applied to.
Mhm.
That's a bit of an extreme example, but
I did that too.
yeah. So that what you're saying resonates with me, but I guess the uncomfortable part about that is like, okay, what if you really, really, really focus on those 7 or 8 people and just don't hear anything?
Yeah, that's a risk. It's putting all your eggs in one basket.
Mm,
And the sort of usual wisdom is, you need to diversify. But
right.
I think it might be different with commercial art or promoting yourself in the sense that you should have a product, so to speak, that is valuable, whether someone accepts it or not.
Hmm.
Right. So I think that's step one is have a product that someone will value and appreciate. And and it's like every now and then like I'll tweet an illustration opportunity that comes my way that I can't take, and I'll just go through the list of people who kind of put their name forward, and I see sort of it's like a hope or a prayer kind of post. So it's like take me, and I look at it, I'm like, you know, there's this person doesn't really have what it takes. And it's sort of like do they know that are they just hoping that maybe they'll get the job? I don't think that's a good approach. You need to know that you
Yeah.
there needs to be a level of confidence in your product, like you're skilled enough, you have a good conceptual, whatever it is that you think is your strengths, you should stand behind it, not hope that someone else like will uh, value it. Just kind of, it's almost that, and that kind of plays into my idea of like, if you're going to sell something, you need to believe in it. So if you're going
Mm-hmm.
to, if um, can you steer me back on your original question, just so I'm staying on track?
Um, no, I'm forgetting. What did we say? We were talking about promoting to putting all your eggs in one basket.
Right, right. So I guess what I was getting at is there's there's lot of proving that you have to do before you send those postcards in order for that to be the most viable. You might get
Mm-hmm.
lucky and someone might, you like with minimal experience and you send out a postcard, you might get a really positive feedback. But you have a better chance of getting positive feedback if you build up a good case first. You do a lot of
Mm-hmm.
hard work. You make something that is irresistible or
Mm-hmm.
somehow your strongest thing. And that's when you can confidently go with fewer. And that's what I did, and I'm sure you did this with your university or your college application. Like you made sure that you met all the entrance requirements. You had a good GPA or whatever it was. When I applied to my art school, I had just one in mind. It was sort of like, if this doesn't work out, I'm gonna not go to art school, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally like change the course of my career, and that was just a risk I was happy with. But I just poured myself into an entrance portfolio, poured myself into just making it. I nerded out. I went over and above, and I made like a book and a CD, like a CD-ROM that came with it. This is a while ago, but I made it stand out, and I put my heart into it. Which the risk was greater. If
Mm-hmm.
I failed at that, it was like, oh shit, like guess it wasn't accepted. So there is that risk, but I think when people see that, they value it more. I really believe that.
Right.
I really believe that people, if they see not just like good craft and everything, but effort and heart, I think that
Mm-hmm.
goes a long way and could help your chances if you want to focus on the fewer.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
So I'm latching on to what you said about, before you send that limited promotion, be really confident about what you're selling and have like an impeccable package to show them or portfolio to show them
Yeah.
they're gonna look at it and they're gonna say, totally.
Hmm.
So I think this was like one of the first things I said on our call, which is like, I think I kind of feel intuitively like I don't have that yet.
Yeah.
I know that I could, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
but it's a different thing to say, I know that if the New York Times called me tomorrow and asked me to illustrate an article about whatever, I know that I could, I feel confident that I could, but I don't have that body of work to prove that I've done it in the past.
Hmm.
I feel like that I have a gap to fill.
Right. And that the onus is on us as illustrators to do that, because the New York Times doesn't know you could as well as you could. They can only know by
Right.
what you've done. And
Right.
so you can either get lucky, or you can make a postcard now. There's no, I wouldn't discourage it. I'm just saying, the one way of thinking of it is like, use what you have right now to the best of your ability and just do it, right? So just make a
Yeah.
postcard.
Yeah.
Don't worry too much about it. Don't stress out
Yeah.
about it. Just do your best and send it out.
Yeah.
That is 100% valid approach, right? I'm an overthinker, so I'm sort of like, I wanna prepare more. I want some kind of thing, and but it's all relative. Like at the time that I made my first postcard and sent it out, when I look at now on my own body of work, I'm like, oh, I was so unprepared.
Hmm.
But I had something, and um, you know, even as I'm saying this, there's things that I could poke holes in my own my own words, right? I do think that it's it's entirely possible to make something just really great and send it out, and it just really is almost more important than the postcard or whatever it is that you're sending out. It is that personal touch, though. It is that
Hmm.
as an art director, um, you if it feels like an email's coming to a whole bunch of people, even if the name has been changed at the top, it
Hmm.
doesn't feel like anything that's worth my time. When I get an email and it looks like someone has like written to me, I respond
Right.
every time, 100% of the time. If it looks like my name has been inserted, or they haven't really like understood me as a person, it just looks like they're just going through as many illustrators to talk to as possible. I'm
Right.
less likely because it doesn't feel like they've invested a lot into effort into even understanding who I am. And
Hmm.
that's not has nothing to do with, it's like, it's just like, I don't think they actually care about anything I have to say. I don't think it matters if I respond. Make it matter
Hmm.
that they respond. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
If it looks
Right.
like it matters to you, to the art director, if the art director perceives like this message that they're sending me matters, I my response to this will be noticed. I think you have a better chance of being responded to versus like if you get a flyer. We get flyers from Design Within Reach in our mail all the time. We love the store, but we get like these flyers like twice a month or something, and love the store, but now we just don't even like the store anymore because they send us so much stuff, and it doesn't. It's a weird example, but it's sort of, it
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
end up feeling like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's 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 kind of a delicate and personal thing, I think, is what I'm taking away.
yeah. Hmm.
Like, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and be too limited, but you don't want to tip the scales the other way and be so impersonal that, people feel like they're just on some kind of robocall list.
Hmm.
You want it to be kind of personal and reflective of you, but you don't want to wait. Like, it would be a mistake for me to wait 2 years until my portfolio is like much more developed.
Sure. Yeah. No,
So you,
you can't wait till things are perfect because they never will be, and you'll always have
right,
things that you don't like about your own work. If
right,
I mean, I hope not too many things, but there'll be things I wish you could have done better.
right.
Absolutely, 100%. It's sort of like you said, it's a fine balance. You want to get to a point where you are confident in what you're selling. Obviously, you should have room in your life to grow and get better, and be aware of that. But yeah, ultimately, you have to just press send and do something. So
Right.
I think it's really within that, wherever you're at, whatever you want to do, um, just find a way to make it personally meaningful, but also meaningful to the person you're sending it to. And
Hmm.
some people are better at doing that more one-on-one, and some people can do that and make something that just resonates at a much more mass level. And everything I'm saying is very much geared around my personality, and
Hmm.
for better or for worse, it sort of makes it's just part of my thing. And
Sure.
yeah. I wanted to follow up also. I mean, I don't know if you had specific questions, more questions to ask. Um,
I have one question in mind, which I can save for now or later. It doesn't matter.
I'll save my question. It's a follow up
Okay.
from our last conversation, but you go ahead.
Okay. So this is kind of going off of what we were just talking about, like when I was saying that I feel like I have a gap to fill
Hmm.
between where I want to be and where my skills are now. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on, like, just improving yourself as an illustrator, and keeping your skills sharp and growing your actual core skills.
So what? Like, how do I do that? How do I go about that personally?
Yeah.
I think it depends on what kind of, if I'm on a kick of some kind. Often I'll find myself loving a particular style or trying a trick, and then I just kind of play around. It's very I don't know why it's hard for me to kind of place what I do. I A lot of my time, so I kind of work regular hours, and I have client work that I do, but so much of that time is interspersed with just like distraction. And in that distraction, I might be like, oh, I have this impulsive thought that I need to get out, and I start lettering it using my brushes on paper, right? With the thought that, oh, this could be the next great Instagram post, right? Something like that. And then I'll do it, not happy with it, I don't end up posting it, or I post it and then I delete it because I'm ashamed of it or something like that. But there's those things. It's like these little like moments where I think this is really going to be worth my time. I'm going to do it, and I'm often motivated by an idea that I think will translate into something I can share, and then it doesn't go anywhere. And I think a lot of my like development kind of happens in these little moments of distraction. Uh, it's not always very intentional. It's not like I go out. I very rarely take a class and follow the instructions. I find that I usually, if I do that, it's because I'm trying on a job to solve a problem, and I need to learn how to do it. Then I go and do it, apply it to the problem at hand. And so a lot of my growth and experimentation happens within a project. Um, this is me now. I think a few years ago, I would say I did a lot more scrambling, a lot more reaching out, trying all kinds of different things because I really wasn't sure. Do I work in Adobe Illustrator? Do I work in Photoshop? Um, Kind of more recently, it's been like, can I do what I do in Procreate? So there is
Mhm.
these moments of like, I'll start an entire job. It just like more recently, I like within the last 2 years, I've started full jobs in Procreate, abandoning it, realizing like um, it wasn't getting the results I wanted. But at the same time, I learned a ton about Procreate, and I've taken certain things of those, and now they're a part of my workflow. What I've ended up with, this is just like the most concrete example. What I've ended up with is I now do zero sketching on paper. I do all my sketching in Procreate. I have a very specific way of sketching that works perfectly for me, way better than pencil. So it's not like it doesn't really play into my style per se, but it has made me. It's just really been helpful as a way of doing the conceptual side. It's made that whole side faster. That's just an example of an experimentation thing that became actually like a really practical, useful thing. And it,
Mhm.
in terms of like how I um, set aside time to do that, it's less that I set aside time to do it, and more that I just did it. I had to do it. I wanted to do it. And that's always been what I've done. Like I've rarely said I'm going to allocate the morning to some experimentation. I have done that for small short periods, but most naturally I tend to just get an impulse, try something out, screw it up, put it away, but then something later, I it's always in retrospect. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds really organic.
Yeah. It's a curiosity thing.
Mhm.
So everyone's going to have a different way of learning and engaging with new skills. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
because they need to do it. And sometimes it's because uh, they can't, they just want to learn, how to get more texture in their work or how to use Procreate or something like that. And for me, it's always just been a lot of the time just like an impulse, and like I really just have to do that and play around with it. And yeah, I feel like it's a curiosity, like what if and how can I
Right.
add that to my process. And often I'll
Right.
try something that I see someone else do, and then realize like, oh no, that's not my thing, that's their thing. I don't know.
Mhm.
There's just lots of different things that happen, I think.
Right. Yeah, I guess I had been thinking about it as like, I guess each illustrator or each artist process is kind of like a black box, like a mystery, you know?
Hmm.
'Cause you don't know, like when Tom Froese wakes up, what does he do? You know, like
Mm.
when does he do his Instagram posts? When does he paint? When does he hunker down with emails? Like
Hmm.
it sounds kind of like detailed, but I guess I am curious because we could probably learn a lot from each other as illustrators in terms of how we structure our time, because sometimes you fall into a trap of thinking that things need to be a certain way, or
Yeah,
thinking, oh, maybe my way is wrong, or whatever.
if you could only like sit down with, you know, somebody who's in the industry, and see how they spend each hour of the day, maybe you could
Hmm.
model your day after that and it'll work better. And I mean,
Yeah.
people are very intrigued by day in the life type
Hmm.
narratives or stories or whatever. And I
Yeah.
think those can be really inspiring. Like there's a magazine called Offscreen that I used to illustrate for, so I get the issues, and at the beginning of all the issues, there'd always be like a day in the life of these, top creatives. And it is inspiring. It's like, oh, they meditate or they run before they
Right.
start the day, or these 7 habits of highly effective people or
Yeah.
whatever it is, right? Sure. I think habits are good to model and be modeled by, and those I I wish that I had some kind of more systematic process for how I engage with self-development, but it's just very, like you said, it's very organic in my case, where I'm sure that if I spent some time really thinking about it, I could find a pattern that's a little articulate, prescribed. I think that the most important thing that sticks out for me is that I've been able to, I just am curious and I go and do it. And I don't have, it's, it's like I have to do it. And then once I've done it, I might never do it again. And I don't have a goal. Or if I did have a goal, I probably failed at it. But I'm stupid. Like I keep doing these things over and again and it seems like a big waste of time, and it feels like futile. But I'm not afraid of futility. I'm kind of drawn to just experiment and play. All my life I've been like that. I've been like, make something, break it, or find something that's working perfectly fine, take it apart and break it. It never works again, but somehow I've learned something in that. and
Yeah.
and so I cannot prescribe my proclivity and my personality to people, but I can definitely say you need to be relentlessly curious. And I think that what separates um, kind of people who go only so far from the people who really excel is that sort of, there's some kind of focus and drive to create that goes beyond just getting work, or making. There's some I love that you called it a mystery. I thought that was really profound. Like, it is a mystery. What drives us to create? And I think the most creative people, there's something bigger about. I'm not trying to make it spiritual or anything, but there is something just like intrinsic to who they are that makes them um, experiment and go ask questions that go beyond the expected and stuff like that. So yeah, somehow we've gone from practical advice to like, I don't know.
Mystical ruminations. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I think it is in terms of all the like little blogs or tutorials or whatever about illustration, this is a topic that I feel like I haven't seen as much about. Not so much the day in the life, because you're right that that stuff you do see around, and I'm always skeptical of those because it's like you're just describing this one really good day you had once where nothing
Right.
went wrong, and you had time to meditate and you had, so
Mm.
I'm skeptical of those. But I think with trying to make a profession out of creativity is still, for me personally, like this puzzle that I'm trying to solve. Because I do identify with what you said about I do have this drive to make stuff that I've always had since the youngest age.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in my parents' house right now. I could take you into the attic and we could
Mm.
look at all kinds of creations and shoe boxes full of, all kinds of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have that drive, but then the puzzle is like, how do you channel that into something that serves a client need and
Yeah.
repeat that over and over and over? So
Yeah.
that's the puzzle for me, because I think I have kind of like a guilt-based voice in my head that says, "Oh, you can't just sit down and mess around with paint for 2 hours, like get to the point, you know?"
Right. If
But then
that's
when I
sorry.
do
Go ahead.
that, when I do go ahead and have that day, I've got all kinds of material. I've got like people on Instagram going like bananas, like, this is so cool. Oh my God. I'm like, yeah, this is it. This is what I should be doing. I should be kind of just dropping hours and hours into this playful process with no fixed idea of what the end result is going to be,
Mm-hmm.
which for me can be really different from client work, because a lot of times with a client, you have the time pressure. You know exactly what size and what colors it needs to be. They're kind of already giving you a little bit, you need to have a tree and a bear and this or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's very different parts, very different, like parts of my brain that do both of those things. And how do you bring them together? You know?
Right. Yeah. I think I mean, you said you feel guilty setting aside time. I
Mhm.
think to answer directly to that is like, if that's what's stopping you from experimenting, then you need to experiment. Like you need to um, permit yourself, give yourself permission to have some time where you have no goals,
Yep.
right? In my case, I have no problem. I don't feel guilty. I sort of just I feel like it's the most important thing in the world and I do it.
Yeah.
Um, but if you feel guilty about it, then you need to structure. You might need to structure some time where you
Mm.
say Mondays first thing to get my things going for the week. I'm
Yeah.
just going to spend 2 hours um, doing such and such,
Hmm.
and then you do it. Last summer I was on a sketchbooking kick, so I was doing lots of pencil drawing in my Moleskine. Went outside drawing cows and whatever. It lasted like a month, a little bit, and then it dwindled. But I did it, and I spent hours doing it. And I have a stub of a Instagram account to show for it, and it's still there. I might put something back on there. It was a total waste of time, but I did it, and I gave that. In that case, that was some structure I gave it. I gave it an account, so I had a venue, a place to put the stuff. I also had a constraint. It's like my Moleskine. I'm drawing only in this thing with my pencil. And you do it. So those kinds of things are maybe for people who feel more like they need to have structure to that kind of process. I actually very much relate to that in certain ways. And so yeah, I think if you're not doing that and you're only working on client work, and in that client work you're not able to actually push yourself, you need to give yourself that time. It's just like you need a few hours a month to like go through your banking or something like that. You just
Right.
need to check in. Just check in. It could be an hour a month.
Hmm.
Maybe that's all you need.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, I wanted. Are we done that? Done with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Charles Hively.
Yes.
We talked about him, I think, in our first chat, and
Hmm.
then between then and now, you 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 did the portfolio interview on 3 by 3. So for people watching, um, 3 by 3 is a magazine. They have a website. They're kind of like an illustration organization, and they offer these free, what is it, 20-minute portfolio reviews, something like that.
I think they're 30 minutes. Yeah.
30 minutes. They're like $20, and you get to
No,
talk to
they're
like
free.
they're free now. I
Yeah,
had to
yeah.
pay. I had to pay.
Oh, go
Anyway,
ask for a refund.
I go ask for my $20 back. It was worth every penny. But you basically like you get to talk to these very seasoned New York-based illustration professionals, and they'll review your portfolio and cut it to shreds, typically, from the people I've talked to and to me. And so that's what you did.
Mhm.
And how did that go?
Like you said, I very much felt like my portfolio was cut to shreds. I had the review with Charles, and I was really impressed because he took so much time. He looked at all of my social media accounts, he looked at my
Mm,
website, and he looked at a PDF, which was something that he requested, like send me 6 images in a PDF of your best work. Um, and I do feel like 30 minutes is a tight amount of time to give all the context. Like you had said, that you don't do portfolio reviews for that reason because
mhm,
you really want to know a little bit of the backstory, like, okay, why did you do this piece and etc., in order to be able to critique it like properly. And I did feel like I tried to talk as little as possible during my review and just let Charles go, which is more or less what happened. But I did feel that some of the stuff he said, if he had had more context, he might have critiqued it differently.
mhm,
Um, And yeah, he just kind of went through and said, um, he really didn't like my website. He said most of the stuff on there he would never show to an art director. Um, but then he said, I went over to your Instagram and then I thought, okay, like this ship can be saved because he said he saw things that he thought were much more interesting on my Instagram.
mhm,
And the things he gravitated towards were really more non-client work that I had done in those kind of free moments that I set
mhm,
aside to just experiment. And most of my client work he just really hated. I wish we had more time because I really wanted to ask him, like, okay, what is it? Is it the line work? Is it the color palette? Like, what is it about this image that is not working for you? Really, he only had time to say, like, delete this, like, take this off your website. This is crap. This is weak. Um, so yeah, he also mentioned that if he were a career counselor, he would push me toward developing. I do like watercolor botanicals, which are kind of like over here. And then the rest of my work is like more cartoony, playful over here. So I have these
mhm.
two styles, which are like totally different. And
Yeah.
I decided to develop the more cartoony style because for me, it's like a little bit more interesting. Um, And he was like, your watercolor botanicals are way better than anything else. If I were you, I would just focus only on that.
Right.
So I had this like identity crisis, like, oh
Mm.
no, like maybe I should just be a botanical illustrator. But then I went to a workshop in person with Charles last week.
Oh, we did.
Yeah, here in New York.
Right. Enter car horn sound.
Yes, just at the perfect. Um, and I felt like that was a really good way to frame the portfolio review experience because I had a full day with Charles and a group of 4 other illustrators. It was like a
Mm.
very small workshop in his studio. We looked at all of our work. We talked about our goals. The name of the workshop was Finding Your Voice.
Right.
Um, so that experience kind of rounded it out for me and helped me make sense of, okay, how much of this portfolio review was just kind of a symptom of not having enough time to properly get into it, and
Mhm.
how much of it is really useful.
So you were actually able to follow up. It wasn't like was it like a Yoda and Luke situation where like Luke Skywalker, like Yoda drops this like bomb on Luke and then he's like, but what? And then he's gone kind of thing. I'm probably getting unfollowed right now by every Star Wars person. But I feel like that's a thing where like the sage gives you advice, but just not enough, and you have all these extra questions, and then you didn't have enough time to go into all the things. Did you have a
Yeah.
chance to then go do that with the um in the Finding Your Voice workshop
We didn't get into the specifics of my portfolio because it was a group thing.
group activity? Yeah.
Um, but we did talk in depth about each of our own like personal brand, I guess is the best way to describe it. Like
Okay.
we did this extended conversation with each person saying um like, my vibe is like really bright and really whimsical, or my vibe is like very subdued and very cerebral, like trying to define your voice verbally
Hmm.
without looking at any images, which is kind of an interesting activity. So in doing that activity, I kind of felt from Charles that he was actually supportive of kind of like who I am more generally.
Hmm.
The thing about going into botanicals, I kind of feel like that could have been just something he said on that day. That's not necessarily like, the only way that I can ever have success as an illustrator, which is what I
Right.
was kind of worried about the first time.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think he's hard in his reviews,
Mhm.
but he's doing illustrators a service because
Mhm.
if you're gonna be a commercial illustrator for the long term, you're gonna need to be self-critical and to take criticism, which I think most people understand quite intuitively. But in practice, it's very hard to hear it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's because it's deliberate discouragement, right? His job is in a way um, to put an obstacle in your way and to see if you can jump over it.
Mhm.
And the jumping over it might be in spite of what he said or because of what he said. And that's how we'll get better. It's like
Mhm.
and having you make that question of like, I'm better at this, but I don't want to be doing it. But should I be? Like asking those questions are pivotal and very important. So yeah, I just remember him telling me like my work. I can't remember exactly how it was, but it was something like it was very expected and kind of hammy or something like that. Maybe like uh, I'm very much paraphrasing, but it basically made me feel like I didn't have enough substance in my work, and so I thought I was the shit. And then I was like, I thought like because I put together my 6 images, it was like my best work. It was commercial work. I've been being paid for a few years at this time. Like I was kind of like, I'm too good for this interview, but we'll see how. The truth was I was scared to go into it because I didn't want to be showing my weaknesses,
Yeah.
and because that could be decimating. It could just be like,
Yeah.
I'm done. But it takes a lot of bravery to do that,
Mhm.
right? And so I did it, and he crushed. Like he tore it to shreds, and I got better. And I also sort of harbored a small grudge. Like I was appreciative, like I get it, because I'm kind of like I want to be able to do what Charles does, but I feel like I give just a little bit more warmth to my delivery. I try to
Mhm.
anyway, depending on what mood I'm in. But usually, my ideal is to that's why I don't do portfolio interviews. It's just like, or sorry, portfolio reviews is because I want to know, I want to be more, um, if you like the word that comes to mind is like more pastoral. I want to be able to like meet a person where they're at, and encourage them rather than cut them down as
Right.
much as possible. But I do think discouragement is an important role, and Charles plays that in my experience and from what I've heard very well. And you can blame him or you can blame yourself. And so something like what you said about, had he had more context, he might have reviewed your things differently. Maybe his job is to give you a cold the coming into
Yeah.
it cold reaction, because that's how
Yeah.
most of the world is going to come into our work.
Right. For sure. Yeah. And that's what I wanted. I felt when I went into the review, I felt so ready, so hungry for critical feedback,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times friends, other illustrators in the community are really quick to give you a pat on the back, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always another voice in your head that says, well, what can I improve? Or even something that happens to me a lot is I look at an image I created and I say, it's okay and I got paid for it and like I understand that it does the job, but I'm not happy with it 100% and I don't know
Yeah.
why. And it
Yeah.
drives me crazy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Those are the questions that plague me just all the time. It's like, I'm getting
Yeah,
paid for this. Somebody likes it enough, or
right,
maybe
right.
they don't like it. Maybe they just had to get it done and they didn't want to deal with me anymore.
Yeah,
You know, and that, I think, just like it's important for a reviewer of your portfolio to kind of be discouraging in a way. I think I think having that inner critic always saying, you know, giving you a little bit of skepticism about what you do is a good thing. Because if we thought our work was amazing and we never questioned it, unless we're actually good, it's not going to get good, and we won't be doing it for very long. But yeah, I'm aware of the fact that we're over an hour now. Do you have any final questions before we uh, go on to the rest of our days?
I think we talked about everything that I was hoping to talk about. I think I have a lot to digest over the course of the next couple days. Very good conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I've been following you on your Instagram and just seeing like stuff that you're doing, and it's really good, and it's really you are really growing, and it's good to see that. Good to see you work out there. I'm so glad you've been doing things like pursuing workshops with Charles and stuff like that. You're doing all the right things, all the things that you've said that you're doing, like studying up on art directors, planning a postcard. Those are all, in my opinion, really important and good things to do. And it's just like it never ends. You gotta just like there will be little plateaus, but there's
Right.
also just like it's a constant like trying to best yourself from last week.
Right. Yeah. You never arrive.
You never
Just
arrive.
always walking.
Yeah. But celebrate the small wins, right? And keep on going.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah. You're welcome. That was my take on a grand, wise outro.
I can't remember if I told you this on our last call or if I just had it saved in my head to tell you, but I feel like you're the Mr. Rogers of illustration.
That is that is funny and
Yeah.
awesome.
And
I
that is like, I mean, that is the highest compliment.
Yeah, to be called Mr. Rogers is a high compliment. I think he's like one of the least smeared, most
Yes.
liked people. So I'll tell my kids that. I'll be like,
Yeah. You know, you're very calm. You're very kind. You're very generous with your time, with your material, with your knowledge, with your techniques. You want to bring people into the industry. And yeah,
you're gonna make me cry.
it's great. Yeah. You just need a red cardigan.
I might start doing that in my videos. do a little like intro routine, come in my door, put on my slippers. I do have like indoor shoes that I put on before I work.
Yeah, me too. Look, here they are.
Oh, nice. Mine
right
aren't as snazzy. Mine are just sneakers.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, yeah, well, thank you. That's I don't even know what to do with those very kind and generous comments, but I appreciate it. I receive it.
Good. That's all you have to do.
Okay. Well, great talking to you, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
You too, Tom. Thanks so much for your time.
Bye, Katie.
Bye.